Good morning. It is Sunday, August 7th, 2011. Welcome to another edition of Take 5. And I just got to tell you, it's an absolute honor and privilege to talk to you every day, whoever you are, out there in the World Wide Web. And it's an honor to teach the Word of God because we are dealing with some tremendous stuff. We've got Jesus today on his way to do a miracle, and he gets stopped and does another miracle on the way. So we're going to go to Mark chapter 5, verse 21. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be made well and live. And he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his garment, for she said, If I touch even his garments, I will be made well. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, Who touched my garments? And his disciples said to him, You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, Who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. I'm going to read that last line again. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. We're going to learn something about God here. Remember, Jesus is God. He's God's Son, and He is absolutely God. When you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. And you know what God's like? God is not too busy for you or for me. When you're in pain, you can go to God. This woman had been suffering for 12 years. Some kind of internal bleeding. She had no money left. So she had financial problems and health problems. And I can tell you, when you've got financial problems and health problems, it also leads to emotional problems, mental problems, and spiritual problems. But it doesn't look like she had spiritual problems. She had spiritual truth on straight. She said, that's God right there. That guy can heal me. He doesn't even have to touch me. If I can just touch a little part of his garment. If I can just get close enough to just barely touch it, He'll heal me. Now remember, Jesus has got a plan. He's got something he's got to do. He's got to get to Jairus' house and heal Jairus' daughter before she dies. But the crowds are thronging around him. And perhaps this woman could have thought, he doesn't have time for me. He's too busy. She didn't think that. And don't you ever think God does not have time for you. We don't understand because we're human, and certainly we have limitations. We can only be in one place at one time. We can only deal with so many things at one time, even those of us who are good at multitasking. God has none of those limitations. He can have conversations with every person on the planet at the same time. He can be working in every person on the planet's life at the same time, and he certainly has time for his children, just as you, who are parents, will make time for your children, even if you have other things going. He's the perfect God, so he has time for you. And he understands if you've been suffering. Now, he doesn't always heal. This time he did. He said, your faith has saved you. Your faith has healed you. She had the faith that he could. And you need to have the faith that God is going to take care of whatever your situation is, whether it's actually fixing the situation by healing it, or by giving you the strength or the wisdom to deal with it, or by developing your character through it. But he's working, but you got to go to him. Don't think he's too busy. Do what she did. Push through whatever obstacle you have to push through. She had to push through a crowd, a throng, a massive crowd. If you've ever been in a crowd that was just, a jam-packed sort of situation, you know how hard it is to even move. She was a weak woman. She'd been suffering, bleeding 12 years. She was probably not real strong. And yet she was so determined, she forced her way through that crowd. You don't have to be that way with God. He's right there. But just push through whatever obstacles there are in your own heart to get to God. Or whatever obstacles in your life, whether it's time, or you're captivated by other things, or your priorities are wrong. Push through whatever you got to do to get to him, and he'll take care of you. Alright, now, we are going to get to Jairus' daughter tomorrow. This was a tremendous interruption, and I really needed this. So one of the blessings of this ministry is I need these lessons just as much or more so than you do. So I'm coming back tomorrow, and I hope you do too, for the next edition of Take 5.